Hello, and welcome back to Exit Talks, a show about real people and real life. I'm so excited about today's topic because I feel like the first 5 episodes of this season have been pretty serious in nature, but this episode is just going to be fun and uninhibited. We are talking about the 1990s. So today I am joined by a very good friend of mine, fellow 90s baby, and more specifically, fellow 1993 baby, Kenzie.
Woo!
Welcome.
Thank you so much. I'm so happy and honored to be here. This is one of my favorite things to talk about, so this is perfect.
Yes, you were a definite. When I thought of this episode, I couldn't do it without you.
Thank you.
Kenzie, the story of our friendship is so serendipitous. Let's briefly discuss how we became friends and, quite honestly, how we became soulmates. So do you wanna, what is your memory of us meeting?
I would love to feel free to fill in the gaps.
Yes.
I just want to say first, thank you for such a sweet and accurate description. I really feel like when you meet someone and there's this really innate connection that you have right off the bat, you know that you'll be friends for forever. And I feel like we had that. So I think it was it freshman, or it was the fall semester of our sophomore year, and I was trying really hard to make friends because as a commuter wasn't that easy. And I actually, of all things, tried out for a play that the Performing Arts Center put on, and I think I just auditioned for it, and I came back to the commuter lounge. And Rip, I know. I don't even know what it looks like anymore, if it's still
just
there.
a hallway
Is
because
it?
the pub is there.
Oh, that's right. Oh my God, I totally forgot. Okay. So I was sitting on a couch in there and I saw you walk by, and that's when we had lockers that we could rent out, and you opened your locker and you had Hunger Games images in there.
More specifically,
Oh gosh, what was it again? Oh my gosh, I don't remember. This is where I need you to
Liam
fill in.
Hemsworth.
Yes, okay. Yeah, that's always a good conversation starter.
Yeah.
And I think I said to you, I was like, oh my God, do you like the Hunger Games? And you said, yeah. And I think we just hit it off the bat. Or is that the expression? Hit it right off the bat? I don't know. But whatever the expression is, we became friends immediately. And I remember I asked you if I could friend you on Facebook.
Oh my God. Yeah. So, I mean, the commuter lounge was how do I say this? It wasn't even a room. It was like a part of a hallway that was like thicker than the rest of the hallway. So there were like 2 couches in there and like these shoddy lockers, but because I commuted, like you said, I rented a locker, and I was with my friend Katie, and we opened my locker, and I am a little self-absorbed sometimes, so I didn't even like see you sitting there, and you actually said, like, is that the Hunger Games? And you said, my sister really likes the Hunger Games.
That's right.
So, like, the beginning of our friendship was, like, you telling me how much I had in common with your sister.
Yes.
And,
That's right.
and again, me being self-absorbed and probably in the middle of something, I was, like, leaving. You were like, wait, what's your name? And I was like, oh, my God, I'm so sorry. My name's Anthony. And then, like, you said, oh, and I don't know if you remember this, but we became friends. And we would text back and forth, but we didn't have any classes together. We never even really saw each other, but we were like, we kept meaning to get together, but then all of a sudden we started having classes together.
Yes.
And that is when our friendship really like took off. I was coming over your house to study, and that really, and I found out that you and I were soulmates because we have an emphatic love of the 90s. So, Kenzie, my first question today is, why the 90s?
Great question. Of all people I am going to invoke today, I think it's only appropriate that for this answer, I give some credit to Vanilla Ice. So I don't know if you've seen it. There's a video that was going around social media. I don't even know where he was when somebody asked him this, but someone with a camera asked him what was so special about the 90s, and I think he summed it up really appropriately. And he said that it was the last decade where we were all still tuned into the same pop culture moments. And I agree. And he tied it to the development of the iPhone and kind of called that out as being the moment where people started doing their own things more. And I really do think that we were still a monoculture, as they say, in terms of what we're all watching on TV, watching a lot of the same music videos, which influenced a lot of fashion at the time. You still had subcultures and everything, and people having different niches, obviously, but I do think that nowadays it's so much easier for people, for better and for worse, I think, to find their own media. And I think in the 90s, we were still doing a lot of the same stuff. So,
and now especially it's like there's so much stuff.
yeah.
Like there's like music that people listen to that I never heard of, and I think in the 90s everyone was like the Macarena.
Yes, exactly. You went to a school dance and everybody knew it. Your cousins knew it. Your mom knew it.
Right. So
Yeah.
I never thought about that, but yeah, in some way we did kind of all consume the same popular culture, but maybe even too because of the absence of the internet, like you were saying, the iPhone.
Yeah.
So once the internet came around, people started their more individual tastes.
Yes, that's such a good way to put it.
For me, why the 90s? I think part of it is nostalgia. And I just want to do like a little disclaimer. I don't want anybody listening to this think that we're like gatekeeping, like
No.
boomers,
No.
like wishing like why wasn't it like it was back then? But no, we just the time period that we grew up in, I think, is so nostalgic. So my next question is, what was it like growing up in the 90s, and what about the culture of the 90s influenced your childhood?
I love that question. So my answer, I think, kind of ties into your overall why the 90s question. I think it's really neat that you and I happen to be born in 1993 because I feel like the 90s makes for a clear mark of our early childhood. So from 93 to 2000, that was when we were really little kids, right? We were starting to go to school for the first time, all that kind of stuff. And when our first memories were, we were making them. And I think the 90s colors all of that. And I think for me, and I think you having older cousins too, I think if you had older cousins or older siblings, you were kind of exposed to a little bit more of the pop culture than you would normally be if you were the oldest kid around then, maybe. So for instance, I think what I think of is my older cousin Kelly, who's 8 years older than me. When she would babysit me and Shannon, she would bring over tapes of Backstreet Boys videos and Britney Spears videos. And it just blew my mind. I can remember very clearly sitting on the family room floor when she was showing us the video for Quit Playing Games with My Heart by the Backstreet Boys.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Such a good one. And yeah, I think it was just the combination of being a kid, being so young, and then having this exciting, really catchy kind of music, hearing it for the first time. I think it just made for a very exciting kind of carefree experience. I don't know if I can just watching dancing in the music videos. I feel like your brain is so receptive at that age too, that being exposed to anything that you found exciting or intriguing in any kind of art form just really sticks with you. As funny as that might sound, I really think that just being so excitable made all of that resonate that much more.
I think you said that the 90s was a more carefree time, and not just because we were kids. I think in general the 90s were a little bit more carefree, and I would like to get into that. A criticism that you and I may face is that we were born in 93. What do we remember about the 90s? What do we know about the 90s? And I have such a clear, vivid memory in general. Like,
you do. You always remember things I forget.
I remember everything. So, that is a valid, thing. But we were old enough by the end of the 90s to at least remember some of it. And I don't know if this is controversial, like a hot take, but I think there really is a divide between 1990 and 1995 culture-wise, and 1995 to 1999.
For sure.
And that 1995 to 1999 culture with the Backstreet Boys, with the Spice Girls, with like, that's all stuff that we experienced in our memory. Yes. So I don't know, when I consider the 90s, it's like the early 90s I wasn't alive for, and I don't really relate to as much because the early 90s almost seemed like an extension of the 80s in some ways, but really like around 1994, 1995, it developed into its own decade. I have to honestly say, so the question was growing up in the 90s, how did it influence our childhood? I think we were robbed of our 90s potential because we were watching 90s teens and we like wanted to be that, but we never got the chance because we were 2000s teens. So I was thinking about this when I was doing this script about how everything I watched and everything I wanted to be, I never got to be because it was a new decade. So I never got to be the 90s teenager that I wanted to be.
I relate to that so much, and I remember my dad saying this to me. This ties in. I remember my dad saying, do you ever notice that a lot of the men who have those really cool classic cars are older? And I said, well, yeah, of course. And I just figured you're at a place in your life where you're able to afford it. And he's like, yeah, that's true. But it's also, those are the cars that they grew up wanting. Mm-hmm. Like those 50s and 60s, really cool muscle cars and classic cars. I feel like for me, in the way that I dress and a lot of the media I still consume, it's kind of me vicariously, I don't even know if vicarious is the right word, but me trying to kind of capture that feeling. I still feel like
I want to
be that.
Right.
Yeah.
The 90s aesthetic.
Like that cool 90s girl. I still feel like I try to incorporate that into my overall vibe. So yeah, I'm right there with you. I do feel like we got robbed, and I feel like in my 20s I've kind of tried to bring it back to myself a little bit. Yes.
And these questions all kind of feed off of each other, but the next question is I think the idea of a 90s baby is so indoctrinated in our society because we make it that way, but how was our childhood unique from other decades? What did we have in the 90s that kids didn't have in the 2000s and that kids don't have today? How was the 90s ours?
Okay, I hope my answer is coherent. I have a lot of theories, I guess, and I hope that they all come together in a neat way. I think the reason why being a 90s baby is so powerful and something that people kind of wear like a badge of honor a little bit is because I think that there was a pretty clear demarcation between the 90s and the 2000s in the sense that I feel like I still remember things feeling in my very early memories analog. I remember Titanic being on 2 really big tapes, having to watch it.
Okay, also the movie Gandhi. My aunt always had lying around her house, and it was 2 VHS tapes.
We watched that in history class, and we had to watch it over the course of probably 5 classes.
Yeah, literally.
That checks out. Yeah, so I feel like we remember things. I think we were there for a shift in a lot of technology, and I think that, to me, we got a like you said, I think we got a little bit of taste of what life was like before things became more convenient. And also too, I really think that, I mean, this could be a whole different kind of episode, but I feel like I would be remiss if I didn't mention 9/11. Mm-hmm. I feel like that, again, you were in 3rd grade too, yes. Right? So we were really young. But like you said, if there are any critics out there who would say, oh, you can't remember things from the 90s because you were so young, I actually would argue that we remember things really clearly because we were so young. And I feel like life feels very vivid and intense when you're young because you can't really make sense of it like you can as an adult.
Yeah.
And I think for me, I feel like when 9/11 happened, I was like, oh, terrible things can happen on a really big scale. And of course, all throughout, I mean, talking to my parents, they lived through the Cold War, gosh, so many other tragic events. But I feel like for us, 9/11 really, I think I'm not the first person to say this, but I do think there was a before and an after that.
Absolutely.
And I think that that's when we were at the stage in childhood when we were becoming more aware of our surroundings anyway. And then seeing that on the news and seeing adults be concerned and upset and everything, I think that I don't know. I do think I can very clearly remember that feeling of before and that feeling of after, if that answers your question at all.
It does, but not only 9/11. We were the generation that didn't have computers in our homes growing up, so it was like a technological before and after, and a
Yes.
political and societal before and after. So how was the 90s uniquely ours? I think that as kids, we developed certain social skills like calling friends homes and getting their
Yes.
parents and being like, is so and so there? Knocking on friends' doors.
Yeah.
We played outside a lot as kids and with others in the neighborhood. And again, this isn't an attempt to sound like that I wish things were like, they used to be, what? Like kids these days, like that's not my intention. One, I might posit that it's not as safe to go door to door
Yeah.
today outside. But I noticed that young kids lack a lot of social skills.
You would see that
Yeah.
yourself.
Yes. For those who don't know, who haven't been listening, I am a high school teacher. I teach 11th and 12th grade, and even in emails, kids are lacking social skills that they send me. And I'm not on a high horse like, you must
No.
respect me because I'm older, but it's like, if you want something, don't address me as hey. Like, and that's just a human thing, right? So I feel
Yeah.
like kids these days are missing a lot of that socialization and a lot of those skills because everything is online.
Yes.
I think I told this story in one of my other podcasts, but my famous story of I was walking through the library at school one day, and there were so many kids at one table that they had to pull chairs from other tables so that they can all fit, and they were all silent and they were all on their phones. And that was like a Black Mirror episode. I am thankful for the 90s that we had a time before technology where we could develop those skills. And I don't want anyone to misunderstand. We did have technology in the 90s. I always had video games in my life. We had CD players. I don't know about you, but I had cassette tapes when I was very young. I never
Me
had
too.
a portable cassette player, but like the first Pokemon soundtrack was released on cassette tape, and like you had to flip it to the other side. So like I was there for that. But even then, there were limitations on technology that don't exist today. For example, I couldn't play my Game Boy in the dark because it
Yes.
didn't have a backlit screen. And if you ran out of batteries, if your batteries died and you didn't have batteries, like on a road trip, I remember AA batteries was like always the thing to bring. And today, we're so plugged in that if your phone dies, you use a computer. If your computer dies, like, or everyone has a charger in school. Like kids are surprised that I don't have a charger because they always ask me for one, and they're like, how do you charge your phone? I'm like, I'm not on it as much during the day as you are. I don't, you know what I mean? I don't need to charge my
Right.
phone. So we did have technologies in the 90s, but it was still, as you said, the before times. And most notably, we were the youngest generation to have computers come into our home. And I remember the day we got our first computer, and in addition to our computer, I got a Sailor Moon CD-ROM. So CD-ROMs, like Freddy Fish, for instance, and I had a floppy disk of a Gumby game. Like, so before we really even had the internet, like I had like CD-ROM and games, and then, the internet first coming into our homes as young people in the 90s. So, the next segment of this episode is going to be unlike any of my other episodes. Basically, I have several categories that I asked Kenzie to prepare a top 3. So, I have also prepared a top 3. We have not seen each other's top 3.
We have not.
And I want to mention that I think when you get older, you evolve beyond girl things and boy things, and you just simply buy what you want to buy and you wear what you want to wear, and it's not so, like, just for example, when I was younger, I liked like, for instance, Ariel Barbie dolls.
Yes.
And some members in my family didn't think I should have Barbie, like, Ariel dolls, or like too many at once. And for me as a kid, I remember I'm like, it's not well, because I collect action figures and I like action figures. So
Yes.
if I have an action figure of a video game character or of a movie character, how is a doll different? It's from, you know what I'm, so it was
Yes.
interesting for adults to try and tell me that dolls were bad, action figures were good. Anyway, at our age, we're more unrestricted by gender roles, the pink aisle and the blue aisle of toy stores. But back then, we were very divided by gender roles. So you and I have talked about that we have had similar but parallel 90s experiences because you grew up a 90s girl and I
Yes.
grew up a 90s boy. So I'm really interested to hear what you came up with for these categories. And also, we have honorable mentions.
We do. As you were just so beautifully explaining, you made me think of a toy that I would not have been able to find in the girls' aisle. I did not list it as one of my top 3.
Okay.
I was thinking about it.
Okay.
So I can save that for the honorable mentions.
Oh, okay. I'm excited
Yeah.
to hear it. So
Perfect.
our first category is 90s toys.
Oh.
So not even necessarily to rank them like my number 1, my number 2, but just to share with me your top 3 and as you see fit explanations.
I would love to. Okay. So anyone who knows me, my first answer will not come as a surprise. My number 1 is Barbie. And Barbie, of course, was created in the 50s, but the reason why I listed her as the top 90s toy, and the reason I just love Barbie so much, is because she's always been such a reflection of the cultural moment in terms of her clothes, her careers, her house. And in the 90s, I just felt like looking at what Barbie offers today, I think it's great that they've made Barbie more diverse in terms of ethnicity, body type, hair type, and all those things. The thing that I wish I could bring back from the 90s is the clothing. There was such gorgeous clothing for these dolls that like you said, I grew up wanting to wear those clothes. And I think the reason that I collect Barbies today, and the reason why a lot of collectors gravitate toward 90s dolls and the 90s fashions is because they looked really realistic. And there were a lot of pieces that were very heavily inspired by stuff you would see on the runway. Like I have a couple of outfits that look like something that Karl Lagerfeld for Chanel came out with. And it just, some of the clothes today, they just are
Barbie
uninspired.
clothes.
Yeah, they're Barbie clothes. And I just can't imagine any kid growing up and thinking, I want to wear that outfit someday. They're just boring.
Yeah.
And yeah, it's not as detailed.
Not to interject already.
No, please do.
But in the same vein of like, I wasn't, well, the lengths to which I was allowed to play with dolls as a child remains to be seen. This is, I don't know if my family is going to remember this, but I was allowed to have Barbie play sets. Like kitchens
Yes.
and stuff like that.
Ugh.
And I loved them, but I was not allowed to have the dolls. So, but my dad, he used to buy me some of the play sets. And I don't remember who said I couldn't have dolls, and someone listening to this is probably going to disagree, but that was my memory. Yeah. And my cousins came over and they had this big tub of Barbies, and they would play Barbies with me, and their names are Cecily and Rihanna, if you're listening, shout out. And it was funny because they were so hilarious. I thought that if I took the Barbie that they were playing with, I would be just as hilarious or like say the things, but they were the ones giving them life. So that's just as far as Barbies go. And because I have you here, I have I have 3 Barbie dolls in my collection and 1 Ken doll. I have the Hunger Games Barbie.
Yeah, those were
of
gorgeous.
Katniss. Actually, I have several because I have the Hunger Games one and the Mockingjay ones, and then I have Dia de los Muertos, like 2019 Barbie, who's going for like $600-700 right now, and then I have last year's Dia de los Muertos Barbie and Ken. So that's my little Barbie collection. So sorry to interject so early.
Can I jump right in?
Yeah, please.
I think this, again, it all kind of comes together. I think that, and obviously you would know better than me, correct me if I'm wrong, in the 90s, I think people did feel more constrained by gender roles and ideas of what it was okay for boys to play with and girls to play with. And in the online doll community that I'm part of now with collectors, it's amazing to see men who are very avid collectors, and some of them have talked about the fact that they either were told or felt like they couldn't embrace that love. And to me, it's so special to see, because you do get that sense that someone is reclaiming something that they felt like they weren't allowed to have. And yeah, they're just the sweetest people, and it's just really heartening to see. And my sister having a son, we talk about those things a lot, and he has dolls and isn't restrained by any of those ideas. And it was different, and it just is really neat to see people kind of just do what they want now. So yeah.
All right, so what's your number 2 and 3?
My number 2 is Tamagotchi.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
My sister helped me come up with this one. I have a distinct memory of us walking out of Toys R Us with a Tamagotchi, and I was no older than 5. Again, these are early memories, but they're still memories. And I just remember thinking, I don't know how to take care of this. My sister better take care of this for me. I was like, I don't want to kill this thing. I know it's virtual, but I still don't want to have that blood on my hands.
But the 90s and the 2000s were huge for e-pets.
Yeah, they were. Oh my gosh. Yeah, I feel like I watched this really cool video. I wish I could remember who made it so I could credit them. But just talking about how there were developers who were starting to make more kind of techie electronic pets and games for girls, which I think was really cool.
Well, I remember like the Littlest Pet Shop, I feel like, was some of the first, and I could be wrong, but those were some of the first e-pets that I saw specifically for girls. But Tamagotchi kind of defied gender. It wasn't really...
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's what I think was so cool about it. And I think that it was just... I just thought it was so high tech at the time that you could have something that was electronic that you could put in your pocket.
But it was like living and sentient.
Yeah, exactly. So that is my number 2. And then my number 3 is, I don't know if you will remember this. And again, a lot of my answers that I'm giving are shaped by the fact that I have a sister who's 4.5 years older than me. So I definitely have more... keep using this word, but a window into what older kids were doing. Do you know what a sky dancer is?
I think I know the video of a young girl getting a sky dancer and it going straight into the fireplace.
Okay, that checks out. Okay. 100%. That answer alone tells me that you know what a sky dancer is.
It's like you rip it from the bottom and then it twirls and yes.
So your description of the video that you saw of a little girl getting a sky dancer for Christmas and then having it fly to the fireplace is 100% accurate.
Perfect.
I remember my parents were so great. Growing up, our house was always very kid friendly. We had stuff moved out of the way in the family room, and we just had our toy bins and stuff. So I remember my sister and I pulling the cord at the base of the toy and then having the doll just go in any direction all over the family room. And it was real. I don't know if they ever had a lawsuit, but if you go on the internet and you talk to anybody about their memories of Sky Dancer, people inevitably have some memory of an injury or a close call. I mean, they were small, so...
So what are your honorable mentions?
My honorable mention, I loved Hot Wheels.
Oh,
I loved Hot Wheels.
Okay.
Yes. So I had, and we're still family friends with them. One of my friends growing up named Jimmy, he had a just big box just full of cars, and we're all different kinds. So there were muscle cars. There were... The funny thing is, I love cars. I really don't know enough about identifying them. I kind of just like the way they look more. That makes me feel better.
Yeah.
But I just was so entranced by them. And some of them, I loved the details of the doors would open. I loved the different colors. And my parents were always, my parents were very relaxed. And I think it's easier, sadly, I think it's easier for girls to kind of cross more, or it was then, for girls to kind of cross more into boy,
right?
Not boy toy, but boy toy territory. I'm doing air quotes. And yeah, I think any boy I knew at that age, or not any, but boys I knew at that age really loved them. And I had some that would keep over at my grandma's house, and I just always loved them.
What I remember about Hot Wheels is the play sets, or
the tracks.
Yes, you can build your own track. And I remember I had one that like clamped onto a high like shelf and that like sloped down. And there were all these commercials about these Hot Wheel play sets. Like I feel like there was a shark one, there was like a monster one, and like it flies and it hits a button and the monster gets launched off the mountain.
Yes.
And I don't think I had any of those, but it did always kind of occur to me like how much can you play with that? And then like when you do it a couple times, are you done? But
Exactly.
did you have other honorables?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. I was thinking really hard because I love toys.
I'm a little disappointed, and I don't know if this
Yeah.
is a 90s thing, but I was for some reason manifesting you to mention Polly Pockets. Were you into those at
How
all?
could I forget? Yes, I was. And again, this is the 800th time I have mentioned my sister. My sister, I had a lot of her hand-me-downs too. We shared a lot because we liked the same things. We had so many Polly. I can't believe I forgot that. Yes. Okay. I think I have to. I'm sorry, Sky Dancer. You're getting fly away.
Fly away.
Fly away. Polly Pocket sets. I look at them now, even as an adult. They're so beautiful and detailed, and they're the most beautiful pastel color schemes. They had restaurant sets. They had. We had this one set that was a mansion, and there was a pond, and there was a pool, and it just let you be so imaginative. And I feel like toys in the 90s, here's something else too, is talking about technology. I feel like things still felt analog in a lot of ways, where toys didn't really talk. I mean, some did, but toys didn't talk at you as much or create storylines for you. You really had to, like you said, you had to animate the toy yourself.
Yeah,
and
use your imagination.
yeah, exactly. And yeah, oh yeah, I could go on and on. One of my favorite ones that I remember was the castle set. It was so pretty. So yeah, I'm sorry.
Oh no.
Please, you were very spot on and thinking that I would say that. I should have said that. So yeah, sorry. That actually is probably number 2. If we are, I know we said we weren't really listing in order of favorites,
right.
but if I had to, that's right after Barbie for sure.
So this one's not on my list, but I don't think you can think of the 90s toys and not think of Tickle Me Elmo, which like when eBay first launched and like it was impossible to find with stores, it was being scalped for hundreds and hundreds of dollars. So just a little shout out to Tickle Me Elmo. 2 of these are kind of cheating. So this is 90s toys. My number 1, I just have Pokemon. So Pokemon was a TV show and video game series, but also toys. And I was so big into Pokemon toys in the 90s, like any 90s kid into Pokemon. And I don't mean to be a Gen 1er, but I just
you should be.
Being there in the beginning is something that it was just, it took it took the country by storm, and it was just something unlike we've ever seen before. And just being there at the start of it all is something that I'm really like is very special to me about the 90s, and that formed, you know, pretty much my adult life, because I still play Pokemon, I still collect Pokemon. Anyway, so actually I don't mean to be like that girl, but I had to have been one of the first people to ever discover Pokemon in the 90s, so much so that my uncle and my mom would like go to stores looking for Pokemon, and none of the stores knew what they were talking about. They had no idea what Pokemon was, and they saw the transition from them going to ask and no one knowing to stores exploding with Pokemon stuff. And actually some of my first Pokemon toys are from Japan, from eBay. I mean, I can't mention the 90s without mentioning Pokemon, and I don't have a video game category, but yeah. So my second toy, and I'm cheating a little bit, is the Game Boy Color. It is a video game system and the N64. So, you know, people crap on video games, but Pokemon Yellow and my first Game Boy Color actually helped me learn how to read. So I learned how to read playing at the age of 3. I'm a gamer now, so I think anyone would have nostalgic feelings towards that type of thing in the 90s. This one I don't know if you heard of. Have you heard of Silly Slammers?
Were they those sticky hand things? Okay, no, then I haven't.
Silly Slammers were like little stuffed toys. They had like faces and stuff like that. They were like ugly or creepy or spooky, and when you threw them at the ground, they talked and they made a noise.
That I'm not just saying this, that does sound familiar.
So Silly Slammers was a big thing when I was young. I would get my hair cut in Shop City, and then we would go to like the drugstore next door and get a Silly Slammer like every time I got my hair cut. So that is just something niche that I really liked. My honorables, pretty specifically me, Crazy Bones. Do you know Crazy Bones?
No. See, I'm learning so much.
Oh, I'm glad. So Crazy Bones actually were like some of the first blind bag toys. I feel like you would buy a pack and you didn't necessarily know what you were going to get. And they were monocolored. They were one color little plastic toys. I think there was a game where you like stack them up or something. I don't know. I never played the game, but I collected those, and actually McDonald's did a line of Crazy Bones, and there were Crazy Bones stickers and stuff, and being spooky, I collected Crazy Bones. My other two honorable mentions, I just have to because of the 90s, are Beanie Babies.
Oh, yes.
And Pogs.
Yes.
And I'm a like legit 90s baby through and through. I don't know what Pogs were ever for, and I don't know what they ever did.
I know. You know what's funny? I only heard of them just on, different social media sites like BuzzFeed and different sites that would list popular toys. I don't know if I ever saw any myself.
I had a couple. And I mean, when you think of the 90s, like the Pogs had like aliens on them, like just pure 90s through and through. And I remember my friend growing up, like his brother had like a huge long plastic cylinder full of Pogs. And again, I don't even know how you bought them. I don't know how they came packaged. I just knew that people had them and collected them. And I really don't know what they were for, but that is something big that I remember. And like Lisa Frank. I don't know if that's like a toy or like.
Okay, I'm cracking my knuckles. This is my time. My time has come.
Okay.
Between my sister and I. So Lisa Frank I think that's actually her real name. Apparently, she is rather elusive. I don't know if she's really given a lot of interviews or anything, but I know that I would just probably describe her as an artist or illustrator who just did lots of. I hate to say girl stuff, but
yeah, that's what I was going to say.
Yeah.
I mean, all the girls in grade school
folders,
had exactly
binders, erasers,
yeah.
pencils, stationery. I think at some point shirts, and the actress Mila Kunis, if you go on YouTube, I think that was one of her first jobs was being in a Lisa Frank commercial.
Oh my God, I didn't know that.
Yeah. So I would just say in general, merch. I don't know if I can sum it up in that.
She's making a comeback. I don't know if you know, but she's making stuff.
I saw that. And again, I think it goes back to, like you said, that 30-year cycle. But oh my God, we had so much. I'm pretty sure we have a couple odds and ends of things that we had as kids because we got rid of a lot of stuff in the move when my family moved. But
isn't that the worst? I
know. It makes me so sad. But then on the flip side, that makes me that much more excited when I find something. And I saw a Lisa Frank sticker on something of ours on an old crayon box that we had. And stickers were really big too. I just feel like in general.
Yes.
Yeah, I feel like I don't know if kids get as excited about stickers as we did. It was so thrilling then.
Okay, another side venture, but
yes.
When we were in elementary school, we did the whole Valentine thing.
Yeah.
And I feel like the coolest Valentines were the ones that had sticker sheets.
That's right.
And I had Sailor Moon Valentines, and I still have some of those stickers. I like put them on a support beam in my basement, and luckily I didn't ever move. My mom is still in the same house that I grew up in, and so I'm gonna have to look for those and see if those are still there.
Please do.
But that's a good segue into our next category.
Yes, it is.
Our next category is top 90s cartoons.
Oh yeah.
Do you want to start this one, or do you want me to start this one?
You can go first. I went first last time. It's your turn.
Okay. So I did not include Pokemon because I already included it, but that was definitely one of my major ones. So instead I included Sailor Moon, Captain Planet, and Digimon, which
very nice.
Because I mentioned Pokemon, I have to mention Digimon. And one thing I noticed about each of these shows is that, how do I explain it? There's a theme where there's several main characters that all have a certain specific special power unique to them. And it gave me in the mindset growing up, like I always role played in my head the special power I would have. So for instance, the show Sailor Moon, there wasn't a Sailor Earth in the show, and I know it's Tuxedo Mask, but anyway, so like I was Sailor Earth, and in Captain Planet, I always pretended to have like the Ring of Ice, because they all had like it was like Earth, Wind, Water, Heart, and then with my powers combined,
yes,
whatever. And with Digimon, I always pretended I had the Crest of Sincerity. So like I feel like 90s shows, there was a group of diverse characters that all kind of fulfilled a niche. So I would always play with either take one of the niches that they had on the show or make my own. So the 90s was when anime first really started coming into the West, into the United States. And I remember the merchandise. Sailor Moon actually, I talked crap about my family and not letting me have dolls. I had a lot of Sailor Moon dolls.
I had a Sailor Moon doll.
Oh my God, queen.
Her herself.
That's awesome.
I loved her.
Although mine were like action figure size, so they were fairly small. I don't know, but I did have a lot of Sailor Moon merchandise. So okay, shout out to my family for that. But anime was so expensive back in the 90s. I remember famously, I have a friend who I think paid $100 for a Yu-Gi-Oh! Like either VHS or DVD with like 2 or 4 episodes on it. But so that really was when Japanese media started coming to the States. So when I was a little kid, I loved Sailor Moon, and as I mentioned, my first CD-ROM with our computer was a Sailor Moon CD-ROM. I still have it.
Oh my God, I'm so glad you do.
And I loved Captain Planet. I loved Digimon. And my honorables are VeggieTales, the Jesus version. The Jesus version. And I'm not religious per se, but that's what I grew up with.
Yeah.
Actually, I remember in kindergarten, a kid brought in a VeggieTale tape, and I don't know how, but we all ended up like as both kindergarten classes like went into the conference room and watched it. And I don't know if that would like fly today, but anyway, I liked it. I don't know if you've ever heard of Gargoyles.
Yes, it was on Disney. It was a Disney show.
Yeah, and it's funny, like I did have some Gargoyles toys, and I had like Shark Boys too. I don't know if you ever heard of Shark Boys. Again, there's that boy marketing thing, like that was the boy stuff. But like in the previews to like Shark Boys, they would always play like Gargoyle previews and stuff like that. And I cheated. Are you surprised? My last honorable mention is not a cartoon. It is Are You Afraid of the Dark?
Well, any opportunity to talk about this show, I have not. I've lost my ability to form sentences.
Well, I knew you wouldn't disagree with me including that, but
no.
So Are You Afraid of the Dark was on Nickelodeon, and it was on at 5 p.m. and my gran used to come over my house and watch me when I was little, and my mom worked till 5 p.m. and she got home around 5, and then we would take my gran home, but we always watched Are You Afraid of the Dark. My mom let us watch that before she took my gran home, so that is very special to me. So Kenzie, let's hear your top 3 90s cartoons.
Okay, before I jump in, I would just like to say that's so funny that your memory of Are You Afraid of the Dark is connected to your grandma, because that's where I watched it. It was at my grandma's. So my family did not have extended cable growing up.
Wait, let's just mention that really quick.
Yes.
Cable was, how do I say this?
It was like it was bougie.
It was a commodity.
Yeah.
Like, so my mom humblingly says that when I grew up, we were poor. She put a lot of stuff on layaway at Kmart and all that kind of stuff. We didn't have cable. Actually, my uncle paid for cable for us. So that completely eluded me that cable was a big deal.
Yeah.
Okay, sorry.
No. That's so worth saying, because I feel like that's another thing that we really grew up seeing was, I remember I had friends who had like 100 channels. Like my friend who was able to access 100 channels. I was like, oh my God. It felt so, I don't know, futuristic, but I was the same way. And again, that ties into this. So I feel like what you said about having shows with, I mean, I know it's cartoons, but cast, like a big diverse cast. I feel like those were the shows that I gravitated toward as a kid. And as we were saying, we were talking about how cable felt like it was kind of a luxe thing. It wasn't something that everybody just had growing up, and my family didn't have it. So some of the shows I'll mention, I grew up watching at my grandma's, who babysat me like yours did. But my number one show that I will fight for to this day, and if I ever have kids, I'll be showing to them, is Arthur.
Oh, that's a good one.
Thank you. I loved Arthur growing up. He felt like my friend, as corny as that sounds. I just felt so connected to him. I think that show was so great I could probably have a podcast episode just about the TV show of Arthur.
But wait, I forgot about PBS.
Right, PBS. I grew up on PBS.
Me too.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And I feel like it was so cool that was our free TV, and they were such good educational shows. There were honestly a lot of life lessons that I feel like my parents chipped in a little bit too, but I feel like Arthur, I remember one episode in particular where Arthur goes to a junkyard and he scrapes his knee, and he wasn't supposed to go there. and he told DW not to tell their parents because he wasn't supposed to be there, but then his knee ended up getting infected. And as cheesy as this sounds, I'm sure that my parents have taught me this anyway, but I think the thing that I got from that episode is if someone's in danger, you have to tell an adult. As corny as that, can you tell I was a giant nerd growing up and always like the mom friend? But I remember that really stuck with me, that, okay, your parents would rather you be safe and know that you're in need of help than be mad at you for doing something you weren't supposed to do. So yeah, I feel like Arthur was so great at, though, in a really organic, preachy kind of hitting you over the head way. I feel like it was really respectful towards kids and treated them like they were intelligent enough to be able to pick up on things without being obnoxious about it.
So I actually have an Arthur episode that sticks out to me, and it scared me when I was a kid.
Please,
it was the one where Arthur and Francine get stuck in the library overnight.
Yes! Oh my, is that going to happen to us now? We're recording in a library now.
We're recording in a library. No, but that one sticks out to me.
Me too. And that's another thing I feel like was great about that show, is it really celebrated reading. I mean, maybe not everybody wanted to get trapped in a library, because it was a very creepy episode. But yeah, I feel like the show just was a great representation of an everyday city, and there were people from all socioeconomic backgrounds and different families, makeups and things like that. And they managed to talk about different art. Like I remember Yo-Yo Ma was in an episode. That's how I learned who he was.
I've heard the name. Yeah. Is it embarrassing if I don't know?
Not at all. No. I played violin growing up, so he was in my orbit. He is a cellist.
Gotcha.
Yeah, so they introduced real life people, and I was like, oh, I know who that is. So yeah, I love Arthur. And DW, his little sister, was kind of my blueprint.
Oh my God.
Yeah, I was a terror like her. So yeah, I could go on and on about Arthur. That's my number one cartoon. My second one is Rugrats.
Okay.
Yeah, I watched Rugrats at my grandma's all the time. I found a picture of me recently from probably 1996. I have a Rugrats t-shirt. I remember for my 5th birthday, I got the twins on the show, Phil and Lil.
Yes.
I got little dolls of them.
Did you send me a picture? I feel like there's a picture of you as a little kid opening up those that you showed me.
That's it. I did. Yes. That was a very euphoric moment for me, clearly.
Yes.
There was just something about that show. It was just kind of quirky. Like the illustration style was very distinct, whatever the right adjective is.
I don't mean to split hairs over a
Please
TV
do.
show.
Oh, that's why we're talking right now. It's just split hairs.
I always hated Chucky.
Okay, Chucky's a very divisive character. Please.
A very divisive baby.
Yeah, a very divisive baby. I could see the reason I don't hate him is because I feel like I was him.
Oh, sorry.
No, it's true. No, no, Chucky, I feel like Tommy was very brave and took charge and wasn't scared. And Chucky was his terrified counterpart, and always like, Tommy.
Right.
Do you like my impression?
That was a good one.
I'll never do it again. But he was always so scared and whining, and I'm like, that was probably me as a baby or toddler too. So
it's funny how things stick with you growing up.
Yeah.
I cannot think of chocolate pudding without thinking of the episode where Chucky had a caterpillar and the caterpillar died.
No.
And when they do the eulogy, were you thinking of the Angelica one? Yeah, that's also a good one.
Where Angelica asks Stu to make pudding at like 4 a.m.
That one's great. No, but this one is like Chucky, they're having a little funeral service for the caterpillar, and he's like, and we always used to eat chocolate pudding, and that episode made me very sad. So I can't think of chocolate pudding without thinking of caterpillar. So
is that so funny how things just stick
really
in your brain?
Great connection. All right, so what is your third one?
My third one is I was kind of stuck on this. Like I couldn't think, but I love Doug. My family loved the show Doug. Okay,
Patty Mayonnaise.
Patty Mayonnaise, yes. I loved the character of Doug because I feel like he was just such an everyman, every boy. I don't know. I loved. Do you remember Quail Man?
Yes.
His superhero
counterpart,
alter ego counterpart. Yeah, I loved. I don't know. That was
I like
another
the dog.
Show. Oh my gosh. I can't believe that I can't
don't
remember.
know the dog's name.
That was another show. I feel like okay. I was stuck between Doug and Hey Arnold. Those
Oh,
are the
I
two
loved
that
Hey
I
Arnold.
loved Hey Arnold. And again, I feel like that was just such. Yeah, I was stuck between those two. I remember so many specific episodes of Hey Arnold.
So when I was in high school, we had a substitute teacher named Mr. Rudy, and I can't remember quite what the story was. And my memory isn't that good because I think either he was a cartoonist or he like worked on Doug.
Oh
And
my
like
God.
when he substituted, he would like draw Doug on the board. But I don't know if like he worked on Doug or if he was just a cartoonist that liked Doug. But that's just my little memory.
I love that.
Did you have any honorable mentions for this category?
I think Hey Arnold would be my honorable
Perfect.
mention. Yeah.
I wanted to say one more thing about the anime invasion of the 1990s. We saw a lot of things in Japanese cartoons that we had never seen before, and it never really occurred to me, but my grandmother pointed all of them out. In Sailor Moon, she always pointed out how big their mouths were, because when they would like get really animated, like they would have like really exaggerated features.
Yeah.
The teardrop on the head, like that emoji where you're like, it's like a little sweat mark.
Yeah, I was gonna say like someone's nervous.
Yes, that was the first time like that became a thing. And then I feel like, they would have like Japanese food in anime and they would dub it. Like there's a famous one where Brock from Pokemon is like, it's a jelly donut, but it's actually a Japanese rice ball.
Oh my God.
So there was always like a disconnect. I was watching these shows growing up and the food just didn't look like my food. The area didn't look like my area. Like, but then when I went to
Wow.
Japan for the first time, it all clicked. I was like, I'm home.
Wow.
Our next category is movies. Top
Oh.
3 90s movies. Kenzie,
Perfect.
you start us off.
Thank you. I will preface this by saying that these are probably 3 of my favorite movies in general. These were not hard to come up with. My number 1 movie from the 90s, from 1993, a great year as we know, is Hocus Pocus. I just adore that movie.
That's my number 2.
Okay, that makes me so happy to hear. Again, there actually is. There's a podcast that these 2 people do about Hocus Pocus that I've been meaning to listen to. I could go on and on about it.
Are you excited about the sequel?
I'm so excited about the sequel. I am going into it very open-minded, and I'm thrilled that they're doing it because I feel like that movie can very naturally have a sequel. I don't feel like it's forced because
Right.
I feel like very easily see the Sanderson sisters come back.
Yes.
So I feel like
Yes.
they weren't. It doesn't feel like a money grab. I feel like it just makes sense.
My only worry is
Yes.
I hope it doesn't lose its little edge. I feel like
Oh my gosh, yes.
as a child in the 90s, it was a little on the spooky side. And
Yes.
like, they got hanged, they got dragged like to hell. And, so I just hope that they don't desensitize it too much. I'm looking for that little
Yes.
bit of spooky edge.
I love that. And I feel like that, again, fits into our overall discussion because you find yourself watching kids movies from the 90s and you're like, oh my God, they could never do that today.
Yes.
Or people would be upset, like talking about the fact of a virgin lighting a candle.
Right.
Can you imagine that in a
I did not
Disney
know what
movie
that
today?
meant.
Me neither. I was
when
like,
I was
oh,
little,
no.
I had no memory of
But
that.
I feel like that's the thing. I feel like, I mean, this is the 70s, but I grew up watching Grease, and obviously there's so many terms and quote unquote inappropriate moments, but they all went over my head.
Okay. Segue.
Yeah, not to
even
jump into a
segue.
different decade on my part, but
No, I was just going to do that. I was going to talk about the
okay,
80s.
good. Yes,
So for those of you who don't know, Kenzie's actually a big fan of the 80s.
I am.
I'm a little more close-minded.
No,
I'm not a huge fan of the 80s, but it is slowly growing on me.
yeah,
But I'm surprised how many major movies in the 80s, the language,
yes,
like F-bombs and
Yeah.
sexual, and I'm like, ugh.
Yeah.
It almost feels like in the 90s there was a bit more innocence.
yes,
But it's like you watch Breakfast Club. Oh my God, the language. I just watched Pretty in Pink. And
Yes.
it's like I don't know. It's just like 80s movies like that are PG-13 and were very popular. I'm like, oh my God. But anyway,
totally.
Hocus Pocus.
Hocus Pocus, number 1. My second one, I have very clear early memories of watching this movie. It came out in 1997. I have a very distinct memory of going on a family vacation with my mom's side of the family, and we watched this. My cousin Kelly, who I mentioned earlier, 8 years older than me, was like the prime audience for this movie, Titanic.
Oh,
I love Titanic. I watch it regularly. I know so many of the words or of the lines. I think it's a perfect movie, and I know it has its faults, and I know some people think it's cheesy, and it kind of is in some places, but I just loved it. My sister had a movie poster of it in her room with Kate and Leo on it. I just love that movie.
my cousin Heather saw Titanic, I think 6 times in theaters.
Oh my God. Yes.
And it's funny because you mentioned at the beginning of this episode, it was on the 2 VHS tapes.
Yes.
So I had actually never seen Titanic all the way through until it came back in theaters. I think they either did like a 3D gimmick or and I was like, what better way to experience this movie the first time than to see it in theaters?
Yes.
So I saw it the whole way through, and I was going to say, I know a lot of the lines, and I've only seen it like once all the way through. I think it's just like so iconic and so quotable.
Yes.
And all that kind of stuff. So that's a good choice.
Thank you. For sure. And okay, so this one, I don't think this will come as a surprise to you. I think this also came out in 1997. More niche, but Spice World. Again, another movie that I remember watching over and over and over again on VHS, and again with my cousin and my sister, and the same family vacation where we watched Titanic, we were just playing Spice Girls over and over and doing dance routines and that sort of thing. I could go on and on about Spice World. It was so ahead of its time. I feel like it was so perfectly tongue-in-cheek, did not take itself too seriously, was very self-aware, but also enjoyable for people who genuinely love the Spice Girls like I did, and I do. I think it's a perfect movie. I think it's great.
So that is probably one of the only things that if Spice Girls was a 90s girl thing, I was very Spice Girls. Yes. Spice Girls. Again, I'm talking smack about my family and dolls. I had a Victoria's Spice doll. Anyway, but my aunt bought it for me.
Aww.
I love Spice World. You and I watched it together.
Yes, we did.
And my favorite my favorite song always was the last one, Spice Up Your Life. And I kind of would, oh God, and my mom, I've seen that movie dozens and dozens of times. I watched it growing up, and I kind of was always just waiting for that song at the end. Okay, kind of unrelated, but the 90s was an era of like, there wasn't YouTube. So if you wanted to watch Spice Up Your Life, you kind of had to watch Spice World from the beginning.
Isn't
Do you know
that wild?
what I mean?
Completely.
So, and then when you wanted like a song, you had to buy the whole CD.
Yeah.
And that's why like the Now CDs were so good back then, because it would have like the top hits. But I have
never thought of it like
several CDs that I bought for one song, and you grow to like the other songs, but we didn't have LimeWire and when we were little and stuff like that.
Yes.
So when you wanted to consume a piece of media, you had to like consume the whole piece of media. But anyway, it always felt like Spice Up Your Life came so quick. And when I was a kid, the funniest thing in the world to me was when they were going through boot camp and all the girls were crawling through the tube, and then Victoria Spice just like walks. That always was my favorite part. So Spice World, you don't have to tell me twice. I absolutely love Spice World.
I love that. Can I jump in with something
really
absolutely. Quick that you said? I remember reading a few years ago what you, again, very beautifully summed up about if you want to see or hear one or two things, it comes with a whole package. And I read John Bon Jovi apparently is a critic of the fact that you can just buy one song off of things now, because he said that albums used to be
concepts.
Yeah, exactly. Made to be consumed as a whole. Yeah, of an art piece, and people just being able to buy one song one off kind of destroys the idea of listening to it in its entirety. But I disagree. I agree, but I also more disagree.
I get that. I think you should be able to buy what you want to buy.
Yeah.
But Taylor Swift, for instance,
yeah,
her best songs are never singles. So
that's what I always hear.
Yeah, so it's like if you just went by her biggest songs, like her best stuff is the stuff on the album that is not released. So, that's just an example of that.
Definitely worth thinking about.
Do you have any honorables?
Oh gosh, I'm trying to think. I don't think so. I feel like, I know that there are other amazing movies that came out then, but those three to me are just They're just perfect movies.
Okay, you may not get this because I'm putting you on the spot, but can you tell me my number one 90s movie?
Oh my God. Okay, let me think.
It's like what I'm known for.
Oh my God. The Nightmare Before Christmas.
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
All
I
right.
appreciate that hint. Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, it's okay. That's a really great point because when you asked me if I had any honorable mentions, I was like, oh, all the great like the Disney Renaissance.
Right.
So many great movies came out, the Aladdin, Lion King, but you take over.
Please
Tell me about how much you love this movie.
No,
because I love how much you love it.
So, I'm a Scorpio.
Yes.
And Halloween is my favorite holiday. It's my lifestyle. And we got a lot of great pieces of Halloween media in 1993 specifically.
Yes.
So Hocus Pocus and The Nightmare Before Christmas are two movies that came out the year we were born. And I just, from the earliest I can remember, I just grew up watching those movies. And I had a very special connection with The Nightmare Before Christmas with my uncle, who he actually has quite a big collection, like an adult collection, like that he didn't buy me stuff, like he has stuff like from The Nightmare Before Christmas. So that was something special that we bonded over actually.
I love that.
Semi recently, but it probably was like 10 years ago at this point. We watched The Nightmare Before Christmas together while I was an adult, and we both napped during it. I think because it's just like such a comfort movie.
Yeah.
And then one time we watched it through and we were quizzing each other like before the scene played. We were like, quick, what does Zero bring Jack? I am pretty gatekeepy over the title of Pumpkin King.
Yeah, well, as you have every right to be.
I self-proclaim myself as like the Pumpkin King. So like as other people may pretend to be, I'm like, you can pretend. However, Jack Skellington and the Nightmare Before Christmas are very important to me. Another side note, we love our side notes.
We do.
I have tattoos, and The Nightmare Before Christmas, I read statistically, is the most removed tattoo that people get. Yes. And that's something that I don't think I'll ever get a Nightmare Before Christmas tattoo because it's like so ingrained in me that it's like I don't need to express myself on my skin because I express myself every day as the Pumpkin King. You know what I mean?
Yes.
So it's like I had a Let It Go t-shirt, an Elsa Let It Go t-shirt, and when I got a Let It Go tattoo, I'm like, well, I guess I don't need the shirt anymore because I have it on my body. You know, it's just something mentally, cognitively. So The Nightmare Before Christmas is my number one. Hocus Pocus is my number two.
Oh, I'm so glad.
And my number three, and I have lots of honorable mentions. My number three is Good Burger.
I remember seeing that in theaters and I fell asleep because I was so little and so tired.
I did not see Good Burger in theaters, but it was a VHS tape that I played over and over and over and over again. Actually, I think it still holds up. I mean, as problematic as all the Nickelodeon and what's his face.
Oh, that's another podcast episode.
No,
Dan Schneider.
Yeah. So
is he gonna sue us now?
Oh God, no. But he I don't know. He was responsible for and stars in Good Burger. But all of that aside, I love Keenan and Kel. And that movie as a kid always resonated with me.
I love
the
that.
funniest part for me is when Roxanne gets hit in the head with a golf ball and she's like, she wakes up, she's like, what happened? And then Kel goes, your head hit my golf ball. Then you went sleepy bye. And so that's my favorite part. So my honorable mentions, there's a lot to talk about here. My first honorable mention is Mrs. Doubtfire.
Oh.
And as, again, a movie that may receive a lot of criticism if released today. Just the whole cross-dressing and, I just don't know that it would be done today. But so my parents split when I was 2 years old. I don't know when their divorce was finalized, but divorce, which is funny, I think divorce is almost a very 90s thing because it was a traumatic thing that I did banana splits in school, and I would say it was taken. I was in therapy at such a young age for divorce, and my mom started dating someone new who I did not like, and so I was in therapy for that too. But anyway, today I don't know that divorce is as big a thing as it used to be. I guess what I'm trying to say is that I hope that if a child is suffering from issues of divorce, that the resources and are there and that it's taken seriously, I guess. Anyway, Mrs. Doubtfire was like the only movie growing up that I knew that it was about a divorce.
That's right.
Like Sally Field wants a divorce from Robin Williams, and that is the plot of the movie. So that always resonated with me. And I think I like projected. I was like, Sally Field is like my mom and Robin Williams is like my dad. So as a kid, that was a very important movie to me. My family would not be happy if I excluded this one, Space Jam.
Oh my God.
I feel like I was very obsessed with Space Jam, but
Same.
then very quickly after I was obsessed with it, I went through like a period of Space Jam rebellion where I was like, I hate that movie. I hate that movie. I hate that movie.
Space Jam Rebellion.
Yeah.
That's my new band name.
But I think I really liked it. And I had a Michael Jordan like figure or doll that I was scared of when I was younger. But I do actually still have some Space Jam like toys from the 90s and stuff like that. So Space Jam was big for me.
Oh, such a good one.
I have Casper, the Friendly Ghost.
Was that 1995? Little Christina Ricci?
Yes.
That movie scared me. Speaking of things that scared you as a child.
I had
totally scared
where
me.
like normal kids have like doll houses and stuff like that. I had a haunted house.
Of course you did.
It was a Casper playset. And my last mention is Kiki's Delivery Service.
Oh.
So from a very young age, I was exposed to Hayao Miyazaki's movies and Studio Ghibli. So I grew up with Kiki's Delivery Service, and no one knows quite how it landed into my lap. We think it's possible my aunt Barb, who we call Barbie, got it for me because like she's a witch and Kiki's like a little witch, so we think that may be how it started. But I had Kiki's Delivery on Service on VHS, and I had Spirited Away, but that came out in like 2000 2001, and then Castle in the Sky. So I had to mention Kiki's Delivery Service.
I love that.
So fun fact, I called my mom and asked her about movies. I was like, what movies was I really obsessed with in the 90s? And she said the very first movie she thought of was this literal Jesus VHS tape that like some religious people were going door to door and giving out. And it was like a reenactment of like Jesus's like life and like crucifixion. And I was like obsessed with that movie when I was little. So that was funny that was the first one that she thought of.
Oh my God. No pun intended.
And I think there's a couple things in these categories that I would put in my top choices today from the 90s, but I wasn't necessarily privy to in the 90s, if that makes any sense.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel the same way. And actually in our next category is an artist who I didn't listen to a lot, but upon being an adult and there I can't remember what this is from. Enough time has passed so we can look back on it. That's a quote from something, and I love that. But yeah, now that time has passed, and we can see things, look at things as a decade, right?
But we can also consume media that was meant for adults in the 90s when we were not adults.
Very true. Very, very true. That's how I feel.
So perhaps our most anticipated category of today is 90s music. And
yes,
we are doing a top 5 instead of a top 3 for this one.
Yes, we are.
I'm going to go first, and I think we share some of these.
There's a big overlap. I can guarantee you. I'd put money on it.
These aren't in any particular order.
Yeah, mine aren't
I
either.
couldn't possibly do that. So my number 1 is the Spice Girls. And my number 2, which probably should be tied at number 1, is Britney Spears. So here's another fun fact. So in the 90s, I was obsessed with the microphones that girl groups used and Britney Spears used that like you wore as a headset and it went to the front of your mouth.
That was such a thing.
Right.
Like it was a thing.
My family got me one. I don't even think it was like functioning, but they got me one. And my living room has these like, I don't know how to, they're like show lights. Like they're lights along the ceiling. I don't know. But anyway, they like turned the lights in. So it was like a runway. And like I like pretended to perform to the Spice Girls. So like that microphone was like a moment. And the Victoria doll that I had came with one of those as well. Next is Destiny's Child.
Yes.
I was... Now, this is where the lines start to blur a little bit because
I was thinking the same thing.
My favorite song of them growing up was Survivor, which came out in 2000 or 2001. But I was obsessed with the song because I was obsessed with the show Survivor. And I like my uncle came over to my house and I was like, you have to hear this song. And I was like, what, 3, 4, 5, no, 8, 7, whatever. And he was like, this isn't really, I was like, it's Survivor. And he's like,
I don't know if they're affiliated.
But I do have Destiny's Child on my list. I have the Backstreet Boys. And I do not have NSYNC on this list because they were like kind of more to like the year 2000.
Yeah, okay. I will let you continue. I just want to jump in and say I was editing my list and I genuinely just removed them because I also feel like they're more 2000s.
So one unique experience I had being a boy in the 90s was I actually was not involved in the boy band drama. If I'm being completely honest, I still have trouble sometimes telling whose song is whose. Is it a Backstreet Boy song or is it an NSYNC song? And sometimes the only thing is the band Pentatonics did an NSYNC medley. So I'm like, oh, if the song is in the NSYNC medley, then it's NSYNC. But anyway, I had to include the Backstreet Boys, As Long As You Love Me, like Hello, like 90s anthem. And the last artist who I was not super appreciative of in the 90s but like defined the 90s is Alanis Morissette. And like if I had to pick like a song for me and my mother, it would be Ironic. It was our bond. It's a whole thing. Actually, I bought her tickets to see Alanis Morissette December 2019. And then COVID happened, so we did not get to see Alanis Morissette. But okay, I just have to say this because it has to be. It can't die in vain. At the time, she loved playing this like Wordle game on her iPad, where it gives you like 5 letters, and you just have to get as many words as you possibly can out of those 5 letters.
Yeah.
So I bought her a copy of Jagged Little Pill, and included scrambled letters. And when she unscrambled them, it spelled out Ironic. And like that's how I get the concert tickets were in the album. Anyway, we couldn't go to the concert.
But that's so sad.
So Alanis Morissette is like very 90s, although when I was a small child I didn't super listen to her stuff, but Ironic has always been mine and my mom's songs.
Jagged Little Pill is a perfect album. My sister's husband just bought it for her on vinyl because my sister's a huge fan of hers. Oh god. So yeah.
All right, so what do you have?
Okay, I kind of cheated in that I
love cheating.
Thank you. I edited as you were going along. The first one that came to mind is Britney Spears.
Yes.
I remember coming home from kindergarten and I remember we were talking about it in our minivan. We were talking about the CD. I remember the CD had like a blue flower illustrated on it, and that was always fun too. When we listen to CDs, there's artwork on the CD itself usually.
Do you have any of those CD albums, like the plastic sleeves that like held the CDs and like you flip through?
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I had those.
Yeah, I used to steal CDs from my sister and put them in my CD player, and eventually she made me a CD compilation and she wrote on it, don't lose this CD.
Oh. So
it was made up of, it was like a mixtape of all the ones that I took from her. So yeah, I know this CD culture was a thing.
Right.
It's so different. So yeah, I would definitely list Britney as my top one. And then we also had a CD from TLC, Fan Mail.
Yes. TLC's great.
Speaking of being able to have a deeper appreciation for an artist as an adult, TLC, they were just amazing. I think the social commentary that they were able to infuse in their image and in their songs was phenomenal. I very specifically remember seeing the video to Unpretty on TV. And
that was like one of the last songs I heard by them, and I was like a teenager.
Yeah.
So like I knew like Waterfalls and No Scrubs.
Yeah. Yeah, I feel like I'm not as familiar with their discography as I would like to be, but I just feel like in terms of an artist who really encapsulated the feel from that time, and their fashion I feel like was so impactful too.
Yes.
I feel like they had a really distinct image, and I don't know, I think Waterfalls is a really powerful song in terms of just relationships, and I think there's an allusion to HIV or AIDS in there. And Lisa Left Eye Lopez, rest in peace, do you remember she would wear a condom on her glasses at award shows?
I did not know that.
Who was doing that? Yeah. And there was another moment where all of the women had pinned condoms to their outfit, so they were really, really talking about safe sex. Just talking about sex, I feel like was definitely a little bit taboo during that time. I mean, Madonna was on the scene by that point, but it's still
Madonna was Madonna-ing.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. But it was just so cool to, as an adult, seeing that message being out there. I'm like, wow, they really did that. Good for them.
So, quick side note, I saw a recent video of one of the members of TLC. Forgive me, I don't remember who it was, but they were explaining the breakdown of music artists and how it doesn't pay nearly as well as you think.
Yes.
And to sum it up, basically, your record label loans you all the money you need to record your album and shoot your music videos, and the first money you make goes back to paying for that stuff. So your recording studio time, your music video costs are going to be taken out of your paycheck. All right, so she was saying, like, let's say, I don't know, you make, I can't remember, but $6 million, and $3 million of it is taken right off the bat for those kind of costs. Then she said, as you break it down and you break it down, you have, she's like, $1.6 million. Okay, well then you have taxes, which is like 45%. So then you end up with $900,000. But then you have 3 group members. So each group member in TLC got $300,000 for selling like millions of dollars of music. So I just thought that was interesting.
That's insane. That is really interesting. And I feel like several of these, I mean, especially as we've seen with Britney, again, enough time has passed where I think people feel more comfortable talking about that, probably. Yes. Just seeing how manipulative the recording industry and entertainment industry in general can be. So, and yeah.
I'm so thankful that she ended her conservatorship. She got that taken care of.
Me too. Definitely. So, I'm trying to think who's next. I would pick another artist that you picked, the Backstreet Boys. They were definitely very present in my young consciousness. My family was definitely a Backstreet Boys family. We did like NSYNC too, but my family was pretty insane about the Backstreet Boys. My sisters saw them. My mom, my sister, my cousin who I've mentioned, and my aunt went to see them in Toronto.
Wow.
When I was in first grade. So that would be 1999 or 2000. And I was so, I mean, I think I was just too little to, I don't know, probably keep track of going to a different country and all that kind of thing. But I remember they brought back merch for me. They met them. They got their autographs and they were super sweet. Is there a picture of this? I don't think there's a picture. Oh. But my mom,
because those were different times.
Exactly. Oh my God, today. And I've heard so many celebrities say that a selfie is the new autograph.
Yeah.
And I think that's so true. Yeah. So there's no proof that this happened other than
I'll take your word for
the autograph. Thank you. I promise it really happened. And I always loved.
I promise you.
Okay, that is one of my favorite NSYNC songs ever.
Good for you. I did not know that was NSYNC.
Thank you.
I would not have been able to tell.
I mean, the funny thing is that NSYNC was created as kind of the answer or the competition to the Backstreet Boys. Right. So it makes sense that sometimes you can't really tell them apart because they were just kind of two different flavors of the same thing. Yeah. So that checks out. Trust Absolutely. Me. But yeah, I would definitely say Backstreet Boys are up there. We had the t-shirts, we had the whole thing. I can't believe that I left them out until you said it. I felt like I already took care of them when I listed my 90s movies, but Spice Girls, definitely.
Oh, yes.
I feel like they were just...
So listeners, one of my favorite memories that we're going to invite you to join us in remembering is I was over your house. Yes. And I offhandedly mentioned to you that there was a Spice Girls documentary that was on YouTube. I think it has since been taken off because wasn't supposed to be on there. But we just like pulled it up and watched it in your bed together, and it was just such a special moment for me. Like we just watched the Spice Girls documentary. But yes, I mean, and we talk about, we cannot believe how short-lived the Spice Girls were.
Yes.
It just, because I feel like, I don't know, when you're younger, your life feels longer. You mentioned earlier that you almost feel like we have better memories as being younger. My childhood feels like 100 years long.
Mine does too. And the older I get, I feel like time flies. It just goes by so fast.
I feel like the Spice Girls was in for so long in my life, but so their first single was released in 1996 and Jerry left in like 1998.
Isn't that insane?
That's crazy.
I can't imagine that happening. I think they only had two, well, not only, because putting albums together is hard work, and they toured and they promoted and everything, but 2 albums, right? At the time, I think they had.
With Jerry, I think so, but they did release another one after Jerry.
Yes.
Which actually, there's a great song. The No, 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 No. I can't think of, but it's like their Farewell to Jerry song.
Oh, yes. Okay. I'm trying to remember.
I'm blanking. But anyway,
But you're so right. And I feel like that reminds me of the Beatles in a sense too. They were together longer, but they also had a pretty short recording career as a group. But sometimes you just get this combination of people that's so impactful.
It's like lightning in a bottle.
Yes. Oh, I love that. Exactly. It really is. So totally the Spice Girls.
Was that 5?
Was it 5? No. Okay. So my last one is an artist who I'm honestly not as familiar with her work as I'd like to be. I'm more familiar with her comeback, if you will. Mariah Carey. I think that she really captured the sound. I mean, she created the sound of the 90s. And I feel like trying to think of what my favorite song by her is. Fantasy. Sweet. I'm not even gonna try to sing like her, but yeah, I remember hearing those songs on the radio. I think Heartbreaker came out in like 99. Heartbreaker, you got that? Yeah, I'm not gonna sing. I'm not Mariah Carey. No one's Mariah Carey. But yeah, I feel like she just that 90s songbird kind of vibe and that really sweet pop music.
Yeah.
I feel like she definitely does it for me. But I think in 2004 and 2005, The Emancipation of Mimi, that album came out of hers.
Is that We Belong Together?
Yes, it is. I was obsessed with, oh my gosh, there's so many great singles from that album.
Okay, so Mom, if you're listening, this was like when her and that awful man she was dating broke up the first time. That was her breakup.
Oh,
We Belong Together.
Are you kidding? That's the perfect song to blast if you're trying to move past something or someone.
Right. So
oh my God.
That's my memory of that time period.
Absolutely.
So I think some other honorable mentions for me personally, Whitney Houston, Shakira, Robin.
Yes.
I mean,
Robin, do you remember I first heard of her when she was a guest star on All That. She was a musical star on All That.
I did not know she was a musical star on All
Show
That.
Me Love.
Oh, I love that song.
Me too. Yeah.
So yeah, I mean, there's so many. There's so many more. So if your favorite wasn't listed, leave it in the comments. Like and subscribe. No.
I mean, but actually,
I want to mention that my first concert was Britney Spears, and it was probably 1998 or 1999, and it was at the grandstands at the New York State Fair, and my godmother Karen took me, and she and I can laugh about it now, but I have a eternal guilt. I didn't really get concerts, and I was very young, and like I didn't understand like what I was thinking to myself, well, I didn't want to sit through the songs that I didn't know or that I didn't like. Do you know what I mean? Like I just want to hear the hits.
I feel like adults can be like that too.
Well, yeah. So we left very quickly. And I feel I have so much guilt over that. And Karen and we and she actually was on an episode of mine. We laugh about it now, but that was my first concert. And then I was traumatized because I was this like a little kid and I wanted to ride this Titanic blow up big huge structure at the New York State Fair, and you like climbed up one side and slid down the other. And the guy, I don't know if this is gonna make it or if I'm gonna cut it, but the guy. And then he was like, you're too heavy. You can't go on it. So anyway, I was traumatized at the Britney Spears concert. It definitely won't make it in the podcast because my mic went out.
Mike left us
again. Right. So we have 2 more categories, and our penultimate category is stores.
Oh, this is good.
90s stores.
Okay, so I could go again. I mean, any of these topics I could go on and on about, but I think we should begin this just by generally talking about the mall. Like,
I have that too. Mall culture.
Yeah.
I have it.
Yes, I feel like I have so many distinct memories of being at the local malls that we had. And I feel like we were very lucky to have malls because, again, just being on the internet and just people sharing their life experiences, you see people, especially in the Midwest, say, my closest mall was 2 hours away.
Right.
And we had 3 malls.
Yep, we grew up with 3 malls.
Yeah, and my mom really likes fashion and clothes, so I do too, and my sister and I would tag along all the time, and I loved being at the mall. My first favorite store, and this does trickle into the 2000s as well, and is shaped by the fact that I am a lady. Limited 2. I feel like you would have loved Limited 2 as well.
I was absent for Limited 2. I had no...
Spiritually, you were there, I feel like.
I love Kenzie because she always says that when I missed out on 90s girl culture. She's like, you were there in spirit.
Truly.
But I don't know if this is on your list, maybe not, but I do have memories of Claire's.
Oh my God.
And because
Yes.
I don't know if you remember those charm bracelets where
Oh,
like
of
the
course I
charm
do.
like slid and you like
Yeah.
cuffed
I
them
had
together.
one. Yeah.
Okay, so my mom claims this isn't true, but she didn't let me have the bracelet, but instead she bought me a keychain. Anyway, I always went into Claire's to get those charms,
Oh
but
my
that probably was the
God.
2000s. That wasn't the 90s. Sorry, I
But-
digress.
No, but I feel like a lot of this stuff, a lot of our memories are it's a kind of the overall feeling of the late 90s into the early 2000s that totally fits. But yeah, I feel like Limited Too and Claire's are very similar in terms of who they were marketed to, you know, younger girls, and just in the aesthetic of very specifically bright colors, sparkles. It's one of those things I feel like I have a hard time describing it, but when you see it, you know it. You're like, that's very of its time.
It's like if glitter pen,
Yeah.
you're like Limited 2 was glitter pens, and I'm like, oh my God.
That's
or like
so
gel
true.
pens.
Yeah, that's it. That's it. And I loved going there, and I went with, again, my sister being older than me was when I didn't shop there myself in the 90s, but my sister going in there, I just thought it represented the cool like tween
Yes.
to me. I
Yes.
was like, and it was expensive, and I see a lot of people online, again, with an adult's perspective, being like, oh my God, it's expensive. We shopped the sales. We were very, very particular about things. And I got a lot of the hand-me-downs too. But yeah, Limited Too was such a vibe in the truest sense. So that's definitely one. My top two, I guess. But again, in no particular order, Toys R Us.
I did not include that on my list.
This is why it's so fun to share, because you reminded me of stuff that I wasn't thinking of.
Well, that's why I like that we kept these a secret from each other.
Me too.
But yeah, I feel like Toys R Us
Yeah.
needs no, what's the word? Introduction.
Yeah.
So my aunt growing up used to call it the giraffe store.
Oh,
I was a
Jeffrey.
very spoiled child, so we would always go to the giraffe
You
store.
should be. I love that.
Okay, Toys R Us.
So my mom actually worked there one holiday season, which is so
Ooh.
sweet to make extra Christmas
Some Patty
money.
trivia.
Some
Patty
trivia.
lore.
Yes. So she worked there, and today my mom also is getting in on my Barbie collecting action. She was a Barbie girl when she was growing up too in the 60s, and she says she remembers that aisle was just the quality of everything was really, really amazing. And yeah, I feel like there was I felt such a rush going there as a kid and getting a gift card there and being like, oh my God, I'm going to Toys R Us today. It was such a fun experience.
Plus, and we used to have two Toys R Us's. We had one by Great Northern
That
and
was
one
mine.
on Erie Boulevard, where
I've never been there.
where Best Buy is now. Now,
No kidding.
yeah, I mean, it was a Toys R Us for a long time, but the one in Great Northern was like out of the way. So it was like, well, for me anyway, but it was like an occasion to go to Toys R Us.
That's so wild.
Now, yeah, I've always been a toy collector. And it's funny because I kick myself for opening my toys and playing with them when I was younger. What was I thinking? How dare I? But as an adult collector, Toys R Us was the most expensive store around.
Yeah.
All the toys were way marked up compared to everywhere else. So, unfortunately, fun fact, Toys R Us is still open and operating in Japan. So when I go to Japan, I go to Toys R Us.
That makes me so happy.
And it looks a little different because Japan has like different toys. Like they have a lot of model robot kits, and girls have a lot of like, it's hard to explain, but kids' toys in Japan are very DIY. Like everything is like DIY. So it does have a Japanese twist to it. It's not like an American feel, but it's still a Toys R Us nonetheless. So I always go there.
I love, if I can jump in really quick,
Yeah.
as an adult Barbie collector, there are so many cool Japanese exclusive fashions and dolls. And what's really interesting, I've seen, you and I could just have a field day with this, but they're so pretty. Some of the Barbie dolls, it's more common to see them with brown eyes and blonde hair rather than the blue eyes and blonde hair, which is really interesting.
Okay, that is interesting.
Yeah, and there are just really, really unique fashions from there too that are gorgeous. So yeah, I'll find a way to weave Barbie into anything. But it's so heartening to know that it's still kicking somewhere.
Yes.
It was such a great place.
Do you have a third store?
I do. So speaking of Great Northern Mall, or the Great Northern Mall area, Walden Books. I loved Walden Books. So that's where I got all my chapter books when I was little, like my Magic Treehouse books, Junie B. Jones, Can you imagine a bookstore being in a mall now? I know that some still have Barnes and Noble, but
we used to have Borders in Carousel.
Oh my God, Borders and Carousel.
And it was
two levels?
stories.
Yes.
I loved Borders.
Me too. I was talking again, this goes back to just mall culture in general, but think of how many different things we could get in a mall trip. We could get books, we could get pots and pans from Macy's, we could get clothes, we could get sports stuff from Dick's. It's like now the only place that you can do that is like your Amazon cart.
Right.
You know.
My number one was Kahunaville.
Oh,
if you know, you know.
If you know, you know.
That's all there is to it. So we had a Kahunaville in our local in our mall, and I feel it was my childhood. Like we went there as often as we could. I loved sitting under like the shooting stars, or like there was a plate in the ceiling that was stars, and every now and then a shooting one would go by. We'd like to sit by the fountain for the water show. They'd have like every half hour, stuff like that. Like you had to have been to a Kahunaville birthday party, no?
Oh, I did. At least one. I remember whose it was.
I was that boy. I had a party at Kahunaville. It was like first grade. I regrettably was never really involved with the arcade because I was like a little too young, I think. But there was a huge arcade, and it was so tragic when Kahunaville closed. It was one of I remember specifically, my favorite thing to get was the grilled cheese, and then I went to switch to chicken tenders, and so that's my little Kahunaville rant. My number 2, Blockbuster. Hello.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, truly. So, I don't know if you've watched the documentary on Netflix, The Last Blockbuster, but
No.
if you haven't, you need to because it is so nostalgic. But anyway, like kids these days, and I never knew the teenage days, but like of like going with your date to pick out a movie. I wish I had those, but I didn't.
No.
But anyway, Blockbuster was big on a Friday night. My mom would take me, and that was when we would rent VHSs. Actually, I rented a VHS from Sailor Moon from Blockbuster that I truly lost. And I don't know how I would lose it, but it was just gone forever. So Blockbuster never got it back. But like Game Boy games and N64 games and like just
I forgot you could rent games.
and my mom, I would have this like activity book where, you know, if I did my schoolwork, I got a sticker, and if I got like 10 stickers by the end of the week, I could go to Blockbuster. I mean, really, it doesn't get any more 90s than Blockbuster. I just that was very, 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 very fond of Blockbuster. And my last one, and don't you worry, I have lots of honorable mentions, is Media Play.
Oh my gosh.
So we had 2 Media Plays.
Yes, we
did.
had
one in the Northern Lights Plaza.
That was one I remember.
And there was one in Shoppingtown Mall. And it was 2 stories.
Yes, it was next to Small World. It was called,
I don't even know.
Store. Oh, that was another 90s store.
So yes. I loved Media Play. And again, talking about like anime in the late 90s and early 2000s, Media Play was one of the only places that you could buy anime merchandise. And I bought like a $40 grunty plushie from Dot Hack Sign, if any of you know what I'm talking about. But anyway, they have like Kingdom Hearts stuff, and we're getting into the 2000s, but I loved Media Play. And so Media Play was my number 3.
I love that. That's such a good one.
So my honorable mentions are DZ, Discovery Zone.
Okay.
Which was like literally a place you went for parties, and it was like a play place.
Yeah. Okay. I have a picture of myself in a ball pit at Discovery Zone wearing a Lola Bunny Space Jam t-shirt. If that doesn't sum it up.
That doesn't get any more 90s.
Yeah, it just doesn't. So yeah. Such a good one.
I remember one time my dad took me and I got lost in the play place, and this nice father and son helped me find my way out, but I didn't want to go down. I don't know if you remember, it was a slide made out of metal rollers.
Yes, I do.
It shocked the crap out of you every time you went down. So I was like, I didn't want to go down those. So they helped me get out.
That's so
I have another traumatic memory of DZ that I will mention to you off recording.
No.
The Warner Brothers store in the mall.
I was thinking, do you remember the spaceship they had
Everyone
in there?
remembers the spaceship.
Oh my gosh.
So like
I thought it was a fever dream for the longest time. Like I didn't know that was a real store.
It really has fever dream vibes.
Doesn't it?
I feel like I never really went in the spaceship. I must have at least once, but I was like, I don't know if you remember that feeling of being a kid, but you're kind of like let loose and you're so scared to go in and play with other kids and see other kids. That's how I was.
Yeah.
I was like, oh my God, there's so many other kids. I'm like, I don't want to go in there. But anyway, the spaceship was legendary. And also they had Pokemon stuff in the late 90s. So that was big for me. The Discovery Store in the mall.
Yes.
So like if you think of the Discovery Channel, like the Discovery Channel had a Discovery Store in the mall with like little sciencey things, like kids
Yes.
things, and there was like a wall of books, and there were these big hardcover books with bug eyes, like big water globe eyes, and like when you flip the page,
I totally
did I just unlock a memory?
You just unlocked a memory.
So my favorite one was called Max the Minnow, and then my
Oh my
last one
God.
is KB Toys.
I love
Which
KB toys.
so like again, I was a spoiled child for like Christmas or my birthday as a very young kid. My gift would simply be like a $100 bill, and I would
love
go
that.
to Toys R Us or KB Toys and just buy whatever I wanted. And I remember specifically one time I went to KB Toys with my $100 and I had Digimon figures piled up. Like I was carrying like a huge giant pile of them, and these two older girls were like, look at that boy, because I just had so many toys in my hands.
You're like, I am that boy.
I am that boy. So
Oh, can I jump in with an
Yeah.
honorable mention?
Yeah.
Again, I feel like what's so fun about sharing these memories since we grew up in the same area is, again, you're reminding me of things. And I thought that this store was a fever dream until I went online and I typed in a description of it to be like, was this actually a place? Do you remember Zany Brainy?
no.
Okay, if I show you pictures, it could unlock a memory. So
Okay.
it was at Carousel, not Destiny. It was at Carousel.
Right.
And it was, all I remember were bright colors and rows and rows and rows of bookshelves.
Oh my God, I just Googled it.
Yeah.
Wait a second.
Is that bringing anything back? I feel like it was on the second floor there.
Now, when I used to go to the mall, I had certain spots, and actually my family, they knew they had to go to their stores first, because then I wouldn't want to go to their stores. I'm looking at it and I recognize it, but I don't know. This wasn't in Shopping Town, was it?
I don't think so. I think it was
Okay.
at Destiny.
All right.
I would really love if someone, I mean, I guess I am someone, but wouldn't you love if someone made some kind of nostalgic page or something for the malls, like the individual malls of just.
Like even an old blueprint. Yeah, absolutely.
Definitely. I'm pretty sure it was at Carousel, but I remember just pulling books off the shelves.
No, I don't.
Yeah.
I don't really remember this place. But one of the questions I wanted to ask you is, when did you start to notice malls dying? What is your experience with that? I know it's so sad to think about.
But it's such a good question though. I feel like, I think like 2013 maybe. I feel like. Yeah, I feel like 2013. I feel like every time I went back to Great Northern Mall, I noticed it looked more and more sad and more empty starting around 2013, I would say. How about you?
So my two big malls were Carousel. That was the first and foremost. But the second one was Shopping Town. So even earlier than 2013, I would say in the late 2000s, Shopping Town started to go downhill. And Shopping Town kind of had a reputation for being the sketchiest of the three malls. But it was beautiful. And one other thing is the fountains. Every mall had fountains, but slowly
Oh my God.
they started to get like removed, the fountains. Anyway,
Yes.
Shopping Town had a 2-story carousel that in the food court, and they got rid of that.
That's right.
So we had 3 malls, and Shopping Town Mall started to be the mall that you didn't go to because it was like a little more rundown, a little more, around 2013, Great Northern started showing signs, things started closing, popular stores, when popular stores start pulling out, and not to be insensitive, but in the food court, when popular brands are replaced with like generic brands, like Taco Bell is replaced with like Chinese Kitchen, I'm like, so currently I think Shopping Town has I don't know if Shoppingtown has any food. I feel like Shoppingtown has one food place in the food court, and they're like only open for local community theater, karate, and stuff like that.
Okay.
Like
yes.
I think it's closed except for literally that stuff. And then Great Northern is just not good. Okay, so our final category for today is potpourri. So these are just top 3 anything 90s that you just have fond memories of. And I really had to think about this one, but I wanted to include it to tie up any loose ends that we had.
I love that.
So I'll go first. So my number 1 I already mentioned is CD-ROMs. And my featured ones are Sailor Moon, Freddy Fish. Actually, so Freddy Fish, if you don't know, is a part of a series of games, and there's a couple other popular, like there was a Coyote one, there was the Putt-Putt Golf. No, not Putt-Putt Golf, but he was like a purple car. But I'm a Freddy Fish elitist. But I would get stuck on Freddy Fish, and my godmother would come over and help me. And there's like 5
Aww.
Freddy Fish games, so it's very near and dear to my heart. Actually, fun story, vaulted memory. I remember when Dora the Explorer was first announced for Nickelodeon, and they did this whole web campaign on Nicktoons.com where you would have to click and get to different areas. And that's why in the show there's a cursor and clicking, because that's how it started. Like, I remember that. Also, a little bit more about the internet in the 90s. My mom like printed me out pages on Pokemon, like information, because I don't know if Wikipedia was like a thing, but like websites, and so she made me like a little book about a Pokemon that she printed off the internet. Okay, this is one I thought I had as a fever dream, but after doing a Google search found out it was real. Sidewalk chalk bubblegum.
Oh my, okay. These are coming together. But
So it came in like a little chalk plastic container with like a little handle, and it literally was just like chalk that was gum. And I don't know why, but I just had that on my 90s list.
Oh my God. Well, it's worth mentioning because that is, it's one
of those 90s repressed things.
Yeah. Oh my God.
I have the Sega Pico game system.
Oh.
It had like book cartridges that you put the book cartridge in and snapped it in, and you went through the pages, and it was actually like touch interactive. So you would touch the book on the Pico gaming pad and it would change on the TV screen. Actually, I had this at my dad's house, and I broke one of my Pico gaming devices, and my Aunt Anna actually bought me another one. Some honorable mentions. Yes, I have honorable mentions for potpourri.
Yes.
Are Zoo Books.
Yes.
And see-through electronics.
Oh my God. Okay, that was going to be one of mine too.
So I remember going into computer lab, and computer lab used to be a special in elementary school.
We had that too.
And all of them were like Macs, and like the first Mac computers were all different colors, and they were all see-through, and Game Boy Advances were see-through.
Yes,
and
they were.
Everything was see-through. So that was a highlight for me from the 90s. And I have one more, and I can't remember it, but I'll let you go, and if I remember it, I'll mention it.
All right, jump in. If it comes to you as I'm talking.
Creepy crawlers.
There we go. Ah!
Creepy crawlers.
Creepy crawlers.
So it was like the Easy Bake Oven for boys.
Yes. Okay. Yep.
But they were like silicone, like you would pour the silicone into these like metal molds. It was so dangerous. And it had a hot light bulb that you would put it in, and then you would take it out, and they were like little silicone creatures. So creepy crawlers are my other 90s.
My number, well, not in any particular order, video games and Nintendo 64. My sister and I had the see-through purple one.
Yes.
And it was everything. And then my sister also had a see-through purple Game Boy Advance. So
yes.
we were very much about the see-through technology. Should definitely make a comeback. And yeah, we had computer lab too, and we also had Macs and that were see-through in the back. It's so weird to think of nowadays. So yeah, definitely that totally stands out. I would also say, and this is probably colored by the fact that it was childhood, but I feel like there were a lot of really fun like little tykes and play school things, like outdoor toys, like the classic turtle sandbox.
Mm-hmm.
I feel like
Yes.
I still see those today, so those are very resilient. And I had a lot of fun sprinklers Did you ever see the Crazy Daisy sprinkler? I YouTubed a commercial for it. It came out in the 90s, and it was this toy where you hooked it up to your hose, and it's kind of what it sounds like. The water would come through a hose and spurt out at the top of this contraption. It basically looked like a daisy, like a giant daisy.
Yeah.
And it would just kind of flop and wave around based on the hose's water pressure, and it was just so much fun. And I loved that.
I think I had a gopher one.
You probably
that was
did.
like, it was hiding in a pot and the water would come out the top, and then periodically the gopher would come out and like spray you from the side.
Okay, that sounds really
but yeah,
familiar.
those hose toys.
Yeah, I loved those.
How about, do you know the little like, it was probably like Fisher Price little roller coasters where it was like this big little plastic car and this like little plastic track. It literally was like two little humps.
Yes.
I had that in my backyard.
Yes. Oh my gosh, those toys were the best. And the classic, the red car with the yellow top.
Yes.
Yeah,
Yep, I had that.
Me too.
Yep.
I loved that. So I would just say kids' toys and like outdoor toys like that. And then my third item or thing was TGIF on ABC Family. Do you remember that lineup of television shows on Friday nights?
No.
And again, I think this is probably because of having an older sister. So on Friday nights, I'm pretty sure it was the ABC network, they had a lineup of different kind of family shows, I guess you could say. So like Full House, I think Family Matters was on there too, Step by Step. And I don't know if Sabrina the Teenage Witch might have been on there too.
I love that show.
I love that show. My sister told me, she's like, you have to mention Sabrina. I love that show, which is also a great 90s time capsule because they have a lot of 90s guests on there. And yeah, it was just, I remember coming home from soccer practice as a really little kid and watching that with my family. And I feel like, again, kind of like I was talking about earlier, or like our good friend Vanilla Ice said.
Yes. Bringing it full circle.
Bringing it full circle. I feel like the term monoculture, I feel like sounds like, but yeah, I feel like a lot of people were watching the same things. And I feel like those shows were great because they were appropriate for the whole family. There were jokes that adults could get, but there wasn't anything too salacious for kids. And I remember my dad even said he always looked forward to watching that. So yeah, I feel like a lot of those family sitcoms from the 90s are definitely something that I remember. And then there were tons of reruns of them.
Yes.
Into our childhood too. I
was not into live action shows, like real people. I was into cartoons, and Cartoon Network had Cartoon Fridays on Friday nights, and my mom and I would have couch night where we would sleep on the couches because I think I had a TV in my room at very, very, very young, like one of those little ones with the VHS tape slots.
Yes.
But I think for a small time there was only the TV in the living room, so it was the coolest thing to sleep on the couch with the TV. So Cartoon Fridays was big for me. Well, I hope you all enjoyed our look back of the 1990s. I hope we mentioned some of your favorite things. And if there's anything that we didn't mention, please feel free to comment. Kenzie, I am so happy to have had a 90s expert here with me. Thank you so much for joining me for this episode.
Thank you for having me. I had so much fun learning about things that I just never really got to see myself. So it was educational and fun.
And thank you guys for listening to Exotalks.